Hello and welcome back to the second part of our 2023-2024 Premier League preview. A look at last season's top half of the table. We looked at the bottom half plus the three promoted teams. And just remember, just get out of the way, subscribe on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Please leave a 5-star review. Follow us on Twitter, Box to Box, FTBALL, Box to Box Football on Twitter or X, and Box to Box Football Pod on Instagram. So we taped the other night. Hopefully everyone listened to it, and it's been a little bit of a crazy. How many managers have been fired since we've last talked there, JJ? If you want to run some of the stuff down.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. It's for those that didn't listen completely, or at least from minute 0, second 00. We do record on Monday night. It is now a Thursday night, less than 24 hours before the Premier League season begins. I know this is the day. Well, it feels like almost Christmas Eve, if you will. Just the night that we're waiting. It's finally going to be here. But yeah, things have happened. Quickly flying through, and of course, a lot of our sources coming from the usuals. Fabrizio Romano, David Ornstein, Sky Sports has obviously been on it as well, and then a few other outlets here in America. But Chelsea have been the most busiest, including ins, outs, soon to be ins, soon to be outs, soon to be destinations unknown. Todd Bowley clearly has enough money to do all this business, but the ins right now, David Washington from Santos, an 18-year-old prospect, coming in close to 20 million. Tyler Adams, American captain. He had his Premier League, his relegation contract clause executed by Chelsea, so 20 million from Leeds. Soon to be in, we're hearing Lavia from Southampton. Out right now, loans. Because that's what Chelsea do. They could probably fill 4 teams worth of just loan players. Slonina, the young American goalie, is going to go to Belgium. And Angelo Gabriel to Strasbourg. Lewis Hall, which was one that we might actually discuss at some point a little bit later on, to Crystal Palace. And also someone that I know Mike Samsel is very happy about, chap going to Leicester City. Is it Cassidy?
Caesar Cassidy.
Cassidy. Okay, very good. And then the soon to be out. This is the one that's actually going to be interesting that we'll be keeping an eye on probably by the next time that we record. Ziyech, Lukaku, Callum Hudson-Odoi, and Kepa all potentially on the way out. The latter two, Hudson-Odoi to Fulham and Kepa to Bayern. Those are things to be keeping eyes on. West Ham signing Harry Maguire, that we kind of teased a little bit on our first episode, and James Ward-Prowse, both in roughly spending West Ham about 60 million of the 100 million from the Declan Rice deal. Burnley,
now though, so they got all the money they have. They're going to sell Paqueta too for 110 million.
And we're going to get to that as well. We got a lot to get through here tonight. Burnley, we already discussed Sander Berge. That was confirmed, 15 million early on Tuesday morning. Aaron Ramsey, 14 million from Aston Villa. That actually might be the low-key move and maybe the most underappreciated move of this transfer window. Luton Town getting Ross Barkley, proper hard man, getting another run out in the Premier League. We said Lewis Hall already. Bournemouth also coming in under the radar. Max Aarons from Norwich City and Alex Scott. No, not that Alex Scott, but this Alex Scott that's costing 25 million from Bristol City. And then Chermeti from Sporting Lisbon to Everton. And yes, the manager move, the one of maybe a couple. And that's, I think, probably fair to start before we get into our top half. Lopetegui out, as it's been confirmed that he and the Wolves front office do not see eye to eye. So break it off now. He's gone, and now in is Gary O'Neill. And I think probably the biggest one for all of us guys, Mike, we start with you. How much does this change our projections?
A little bit, actually, because Gary O'Neill was almost in this exact circumstance last year with Bournemouth. It was a manager that wasn't happy with the money that was being spent in the early window. So they leave early in the season, and O'Neill finds a way to maximize that squad. and to keep them up in the Premier League. O'Neal, if he can keep Wolves up this year, which I like his odds better than Lopetegui, and I like the fact that he has a couple of weeks in the window, even though it might not be much to do a little bit of business, this actually makes me like Wolves a little bit more, and O'Neal is starting to build that reputation as kind of the next generation's, maybe Big Sam, maybe, Roy Hodgson, one of those guys that's becoming that survivalist expert.
Stu, I see you nodding over there. Anything that you want to throw into this?
For myself, who has Wolves relegated, when I did see it was Gary O'Neal, that is something that I kind of went, ooh, interesting, because that is a guy who has proven that he can keep a team up. And I don't think he deserved to be let go at Bournemouth. So the fact that he gets the Wolves job now, to me, is interesting. I like them a little more. I still think they get relegated, but it definitely makes me think a little more like, okay, this is a team that can maybe stay up now that they have O'Neal.
Yeah, I agree with that. I still think they go down. I think Bournemouth now, after just a couple of moves that they made, those are kind of like the table setters for what they need for this season. I think maybe even they could go as high as 14th, though. It's kind of funny because I've been watching a lot of content creators and others putting out their Premier League predictions, and it seems like places 11 through 17, you could really just put anybody in any one of those spots and you could justify it. But I do think that Bournemouth now probably are in a little bit of a better situation than where they were 48 hours ago. And that brings us actually pretty nicely now to outside of that chaos. Now we're in the top half finishers, and our resident Fulham expert fan extraordinaire, Kyle Franco. Sir, the floor is yours for your beloved club.
Yeah, thanks, JJ. Fulham finished 10th last year. And I think when I look at that, on the whole, it probably overachieved a little bit from what the preseason expectations were. But Marco Silva just did a tremendous job with Fulham. He had them playing an attractive style of football. They got off to a great start, I think, which is so important when you're a newly promoted club, is that if you can bank those points early, you really start to feel good about yourself. At one point, I think Fulham was as high as 7th in the table. They were only 6 points off the top 4. Then obviously they hit a little bit of dip in form and dropped back, and then kind of recovered at the end of the year and was safe from relegation pretty early in the season, which I think as a supporter was a great relief, right? You kind of came in the season and you're looking like, oh, this is going to be a real scrap, and then really pretty comfortable by the midway point of the season, and 10th place was a great reintroduction. Now the hard part is you got to stay in the division, right? You got to avoid that sophomore slump. Not a whole lot of business for Fulham so far. Obviously the big thing is Marco Silva. They were able to hold on to him. They rebuffed an approach from Saudi Arabia. Alexander Mitrovic, we'll see. That there's a big Saudi bid in there so far. He's still with Fulham. He's a little disgruntled. Not the first time he's been disgruntled. But if they can get Mitrovic, back to buy in with the group, that would be huge, because he's such a physical presence for them. He's such a focal point for what they want to do. They brought in Raul Jimenez from Wolves as kind of, I think, some Mitrovic insurance. Jimenez, look, he hasn't really been the same since he had that horrific head injury. I think he's only got like 1 goal since he came back from that. In fact, that he's even playing Premier League football is probably in and of itself a success. Calvin Bassey comes in from Ajax for $23 million to bolster some of that defense. I think they need to get off to a good start. Like, they start with Everton, right? A team that I think a lot of us are projecting to be at the bottom, in a relegation scrap. I want to see Fulham again get off to a good start, get bank some points early, and feel good about yourself. Because again, they're still a little short, I think, in the middle. They could use another player in the midfield. Obviously, Paulinho was terrific. They brought him in from the Portuguese league, and he led the league in tackles. I thought Andres Pereira coming over from Manchester United was a really good signing. I thought he was able to really express himself, and I thought he excelled at this level of club. Again, need really good seasons from those guys. And obviously, Willian is 35 years old now, right? They brought him back. He had a really nice renaissance when he came into the Fulham team. But again, it's Willian, Bobby De Cordova-Reid on the wings. I think they could use another winger to kind of help in the goal scoring department.
I was
I rambled a lot there. So
No, I look, Fulham was really good for most of the year, and really until Mitrovic got suspended for 10 games or however long he was out. But then when he was suspended, all of a sudden they just stopped scoring. They all of a sudden went in the tank. If Mitrovic isn't there, what's going to happen? I mean, obviously, there's going to probably bring someone in if they sell him for 50 million to the Saudi league. They're going to probably bring somebody in, but who is going to score? Like he was an automatic at the beginning of last season. Automatic every week. Bet on Mitrovic to score. He's going to score a goal. He's this automatic for the first 20 matches there. I mean, he probably scored in about 13 of them. So who is going to score if he's not there? If he stays, I think there'll be, I'm not sure. And Mitrovic, I don't know. Like if he doesn't get the move and he's still in London and whatever, I think he'll put his head down and play. But until that happens, you don't know what's going to happen.
Right. When he was locked in, even when he's not scoring goals, he's a guy you have to account for. Right.
100%.
He occupies defenders. He's so big, so strong, such an aerial threat. That you have to defensively account for him, and that opens up things for other players. So obviously he's a key part of what they do, and you'd like to have him, but also if he wants to go and you're getting a big offer from the Saudi league for Fulham, that may be difficult to turn down.
Yeah, you gotta take it. I think
one big positive, but sorry, Mike, just one big positive for me if you're a Fulham fan. Played a friendly against Hoffenheim on the weekend. Both new signings got on the score sheet. I think that's, if anything, just to lift the mood of the camp a little bit. You always want that quick return on investment to get people going. That's huge. I also think the club did some great business, not only making sure that Willian comes back. I agree all the points with you on Andy Pereira. I thought probably the best football of his career last year, or at least most consistent. And then Jedi Robinson, a long-term deal because they fought off Man City, who desperately wanted him. And 2028? That's a long time to keep one of your key outside backs. I'd love to see him up towards the double figures in goal contributions, mostly on assists, because we know that he's capable of it. I think he just had 1 or 2 last season, but I think there's some positive signs to take away from this offseason, despite the limited amount of activity.
And what I like about Robinson is he's a guy he got a lot better, right? As he's, I remember when he came into the U.S. national team camp and they threw him into a game against Brazil as a left back in a friendly and just kind of fed him to the wolves, and he had no chance, and he just looked like he didn't belong at that level. And then he goes back, right? He gets the move to Fulham when Fulham was, in the Premier League the first time. They get relegated, has a really good season with them in the Championship as they come back up. And then I thought he had a really strong season. He's getting better and better. Like JJ said, I'd like to see him add a few more goal contributions. But he's such a solid player, and it's nice also from a national team perspective that the U.S. no longer is looking for a left back. Like, you can pencil that guy in for left back every single time out, and you more or less know what you're going to get. He's definitely one of my.
Oh, well, one of those Fulham pieces of business that is good business, I think, is Callum Hudson-Odoi.
Yeah,
he's a great buy low candidate right now. He just really fell out of favor at Chelsea. Nothing particularly went wrong for Callum Hudson-Odoi. He just kind of lost the numbers game. If Fulham can get Callum Hudson-Odoi, Kyle, I think it's hard to argue that's not a massive upgrade over Cordova-Reid, even though he had a good year last year.
Yeah. Look, they need guys who can add goals and get into dangerous positions. He'd certainly be a guy who did that. And now we'll take predictions on Fulham as we've been doing. Again, I thought they slightly overachieved last year. We'll see what happens with Mitrovic. I still have Fulham staying in the division. I've got them 13th this year.
I got a lot of the way you described Wolves, Kyle, in the last episode. I got them finishing around that 14th, 15th window, but it's, hey, they're 4 points out. Are Fulham going to get pulled into this? Oh, no, they got a result. Now they're 7 points clear. Now they're good. Yeah, maybe they're struggling for form. No, they're okay. They're 7 points clear. Again, just in that neighborhood in the discussion, but not really in danger.
Let's also not forget, folks, that new stand is coming in. What does that mean? More money, which means more money to spend probably in the January window, because they're going to be a lot like the team we're going to talk about next. They're West London rivals, where I'm not too worried about them. I'm not worried about Fulham. Probably going to be a safe 11th or 12th, and they'll be fine for next season.
Yeah, that's where I have him too. I have him at 11th. And again, keeping Marco Silva on board, I think, is such a key to keep that consistency for another year. So I think 11th is where I would have them.
Yeah, I would probably say 11th, 12th, somewhere around there. I think they'll be fine. Basically only had Chelsea into the top 10 from the bottom half, so maybe one of these teams slides down a little bit, but it's not going to be much. They'll be fine.
All right, now on to Fulham's West London rival, Brentford, 9th last year in the Premier League. Boy, are there some issues there. Starting with David Raya's going to Arsenal for 27 million, or is about to go to Arsenal for 27 million, so they lose the goalkeeper. And then even a bigger loss for me, no Ivan Toney until January because of the gambling suspension. Can this Brentford team repeat what it did with all those subtractions?
I think it's going to take a while for them to do it. And going into what we all put together for this preview on our own end, the Toney, how much they're going to miss him. Ivan Toney, how much they're going to miss him. 20 of the 58 league goals that they scored, along with 4 assists, aren't coming back right away. The good news is Mbuemo, Visa, Jensen, and Da Silva, who, by the way, I'm always going to stand with it. Josh Da Silva, baller. His potential is probably pushing towards, not saying right now, but in a couple of years could be Premier League best 11. I think his status is that high. The goals will be there, but Toney, you always just figured he had 3 chances a match and likely was going to bag one of them. The Raya loss is going to be more of a problem for me. I know that they just brought in Mark Flecken, who's likely going to slot in as that number 1. Nathan Collins, I think, is also a very good signing to shore up a defense, which I know we don't read much into preseason matches, but boy, did they leak in some goals. I think it was 8 in America across 3 games. That's not good enough for me, especially when you basically just played 3 teams that you're going to play twice this season, maybe even more in league competition. So they need to shore up both ends. But they're another club that they're just going to find a way. That Moneyball system has worked out nicely for them. And, yeah, they're going to be fine.
Thomas Frank's system creates opportunities for goals. Ivan Toney is a great finisher, but I also think he benefits from being in a very creatively open system. He's an effective finisher. That goaltending situation is a massive problem. We will talk about Arsenal as this show goes along. David Raya will not be their number 1 as the season goes along. David Raya is their number 1 today. He's the best keeper on that team. He was the best keeper in the league, maybe other than Ederson last year. He was spectacular. This reminds me of when Sheffield United finished in that European spot when Dean Henderson had the season of his career, went back to Manchester United. They brought in Aaron Ramsdale, and the drop was so much that they went down. Brentford is in deep trouble this year with the loss of Raya.
Wow. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. I like Nathan Collins. I think they have to just kind of stay afloat until Toney comes back. They're going to spend a little money, I'm sure. They've already spent some money, so I think they'll probably spend in January as well. I could see them maybe struggling down 12th, 13th, 14th in January, and then Toney comes back and gets on fire there for the final 3 months, and they finish 10th, 11th, something like that, top maybe around there, because the squad's not bad. Thomas Frank's a pretty good coach, so the keeper, I think is going to be an issue. It's interesting that Raya is going to go and replace Ramsdale, who once again just started the tanking of Sheffield United when they were up that one time. But yeah, it's you got to kind of Flecken's got to step up quickly, and we'll see if he's ready to play in this league.
Yeah,
Brentford,
I'm
Brentford,
kind of like.
go ahead, sorry.
No, so
I was just
I'm
gonna.
kind of in the same boat as Sean here. Like I don't think they're in a relegation battle. I think they will be maybe 13th, 14th mid-year, and obviously getting Tony back will be key. So I do think so. I have them finishing 10th. I think they'll be okay. The one thing I will say about Thomas Frank and the way they've played since they've come up 2 years ago is even when they play these bigger clubs, they never play down. Like they never play like it's too big of a moment. They always play the Liverpools, the Uniteds, the Arsenals. They always play them tough. So I think the way that Thomas Frank has them going, I'm not too worried about them being a relegation team. I think they'll be just fine.
I was just going to say. I was just going to say Brentford 37 points at home last year, 10 wins and 7 draws. So the home form was very good. Likely are going to need to repeat that. For me, I had Brentford 15th this year. I think a little bit of drop off, obviously, but as you guys have mentioned, the change in goalkeeper and then not having Ivan Toney, like those goals are going to be difficult to replace.
Don't undervalue the quality of having that home field advantage, by the way, because the Brentford Community Stadium, or the G-Tech for sponsorship purposes, that will win you games. I actually had a friend who listened to episode 1 message me saying, you guys might not know for Luton Town how much that ground is going to make an impact. There are going to be some teams, and he's, again, speaking about Luton, there's going to be some teams that struggle going there. Same thing for the community stadium. Teams will drop points. So it sounds like we're all pretty much in agreement, somewhere between 11th and 14th for Brentford. No issues, but might struggle.
I got them a little more struggling. I think it'll be tough. But again, 14th, 15th, they survive, but they only survive.
Got it. All right. So now
you know what's coming up, JJ.
We know what's coming up. This is the first of the big hitters, the classic big six that didn't finish in the top 6. Tottenham Hotspur. This is going to be the first time that they're not going to be playing European football since 2009-2010, though ironically enough, that team finished in 4th place that season. There's always that debate about don't have to worry about midweeks. You just play on the weekend, the occasional cup competition. You can save some players' legs a little bit. You can really focus on things during training. For Tottenham, that's a huge loss in revenue because they've been going consistently for a decade plus of European football. Also seeing, yes, the continuing, almost feels like a soapbox saga of Harry Kane. Will he stay? Will he go? Feels like it's a Clash song at this point. He's going apparently now. I mean, we're recording in on Thursday night, 24 hours before the first Premier League match of the season. He said this has to be sorted by Friday night. Otherwise, he's staying for the first half of the season. If you're Tottenham, in my opinion, be kind of silly to not take in the 100+ million that are going to be going their way. So they accepted the deal. It's now to Kane. Reports from Sky Sports and Sky Germany saying that he's en route to Munich right now for his medical. By the time this comes out, he may already sign her. He may already say, no, I'm going to stay at Tottenham this season. But beyond that point, this club right now, it's going to be a real wild season. I'm not talking about that Amazon documentary either.
Well, first of all, as well, I mean, their owner, Joe Lewis, just got indicted on insider trading charges. And when that Southern District of New York and the FBI indict people, they don't indict people that are not guilty. They have like a 97% conviction rate, right? So what's going to happen if they sell Kane? Are they going to have money to spend? I know they've already spent some money. When you look at how much money they've already put out on Kulusevski, Vicario, Madison, Van de Ven, Velez, they've spent a lot of money. It seems like to me they've already spent the Harry Kane money. Like that would be my guess. So is he going to put that 110 million right back into the club now? Look, they were atrocious last year. I mean, they were the most inconsistent team. They were all over the place. They'd play a really good. You'd watch and they play really well, and then all of a sudden you look at the next week and they were terrible. If they lose Harry Kane, which seems like is going to happen, who is going to score the goals? They got, Kulusevski and Son, all these guys, but Son was scoring goals because Harry Kane was there making space and making runs and giving them the passes and all these assists. Kane opened up the play for a lot of this. Who is going to do that? You can't replace Harry Kane. You could try. This is like when Gareth Bale went and they bought 6 players and they all were gone out of the club within 2 years. Like who is going to? You just can't replace Harry Kane. So, I know they're not in Europe. I know they're going to be the cup teams, and here's the other thing. At some point, you got to win a trophy. Like they just every year. I mean, they got to a Champions League final. You got to win a trophy. They're sick of hearing Arsenal's winning trophies, FA Cups, and Manchester United won a trophy, and City just won the treble. You got to win a trophy at some point. So you have to try to compete in the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup as well. So I don't know. I think they're in for a long season.
I don't think Spurs have any right of dreaming of a trophy this year.
Oh, yeah. I don't think
whether they kept Kane or not.
Yeah.
There are certain managers that are built for moments, and then there are certain managers that you have to wonder about. Ange Postecoglou, he had great success at Celtic. The reality of the situation is 23 months ago, this dude didn't even have a UEFA license. He's now managing one of the big 6 in Europe. As you said, Sean, their owner is currently, checks notes, in custody of U.S. Marshals. That seems bad. That money's probably going to his legal defense fund more than it's going to the club. One thing we're not talking about, you talked about their acquisition of Vaccaro. They're kind of pushing out Hugo Lloris. Hugo Lloris was the captain of this team.
Mm-hmm.
Harry Kane, you talk about his creativeness. Harry Kane was 2 positions. Harry Kane was a 10 and a 9. He created almost as much as he scored. He was everything for that team. They're too talented to be in the relegation battle. I don't think they'll be there. But look at all the scarves back here. I know this. This Tottenham team feels a lot like this Leicester City team felt last year.
Shots fired. You make a great point about Ange, by the way. And now, fortunately enough, and I'm crazy enough to sometimes get up at 7:30 in the morning on a Saturday, though then again, most of us are because we're talking about the Premier League from the East Coast in America. I did throw on a fair amount of SPFL matches last year, and often enough on CBS Sports Network, it was Celtic. So I watched a bit of what Ange would bring to the table. Yes, having Harry Kane out of the lineup potentially is going to be the hugest loss of any club in maybe the entire football league system. But what Ange brings to the table is a system that benefits the betterment of the team. And also it's going to be one where you need 16 to 20 goal contributions from a number of different players. Because, yes, there's going to be a lot of people that will have their claims about Scottish football, and it's basically how Celtic and Rangers are ruining that system. That argument can be saved for another day. But what he worked with was the fact that he had 3 or 4 top quality strikers and a couple of midfielders that knew how to basically work through each other. Sonny now is still there. As far as we know, he's not going anywhere. So this might be, he never lived in a shadow. They never had kind of that complex, but this might be his time now because he's always said that he wants to play for a winning team. Well, guess what? He's playing for a manager that has literally won just about every trophy that he could have ever competed for between his time in Australia, between his time in Japan and Scotland. So sometimes playing for a winning manager, yes, maybe not to the level of what Tottenham plays in the Premier League, but you never know. That could carry. I'm holding out slight hope, which I know the hope that kills us, but it's slight hope, Stu.
Yeah, I am too. I just think for a guy like Richarlison, it's a huge year for him. He only had 3 goals last year. He had 53 goals and 152 appearances for Everton. He had 3 goals and 35 appearances for Tottenham last year. They need a healthy Richarlison. They need a big impact from Maddison coming over from Leicester. So I think there's still talent there. It's enough talent offensively And in the midfield, I feel like to be a top 10 team, definitely not a Champions League team, definitely not a Europe team, but to be a top 10 team, I think they could still do that. Obviously, the Kane loss is massive. Lloris, same deal. So it's going to be tough for them to make Europe, but I do think they still finish in the top 10.
Sean, I just want to hop in here quickly before I pass it off to you. JJ, the only thing I would say about the winning coach argument, say what you want about him. If you don't win under Jose Mourinho, you're the problem, not him. You
I
can't
agree.
tell me Jose Mourinho is not a winning manager, but Ange Postecoglou is.
Oh no, you're 100% right. I'm just not in the same kind of delves and despairs that you are.
Yeah.
I'm a little more optimistic for them. They're not winning a trophy for years, but they're not going to be in the relegation toils. They'll be like mid-table obscurity again.
I'm convinced I could probably win 73% of the matches in that Scottish league with a one. It's a one. You call it 1.5. I mean, Rangers every once in a while, but I don't. I think they're in trouble. I don't know. I mean, I don't think they finished like 15th or anything, but I could see them down at 10th. It just depends. I mean, if they're going to splash the cash, maybe, but once again, who are you bringing in that is going to be anywhere near what Harry Kane? Just if you look and see what they did with Harry Kane in the squad, like they didn't win anything. They've, been around the top 4. Last year, once again, they finished 8th with this squad. If they finished 8th with Harry Kane, where are they going to finish without him? So I think like 9th, 10th. I think they're in trouble.
Here's my list. So I've crossed out everybody from 8 through 17 and changed it with somebody else. And that's kind of how I feel like right now with some of these teams before the season starts. And I had Spurs 9th. Then Harry Kane was going to Bayern. Now I dropped them to 10th. I think they're going to struggle a little bit. I don't think this is a team that's going to contend for the top 4. I don't think they're going to fall into the relegation places either. I've got Spurs mid-table in 10th.
I know we got to move on quickly here, but I just want to throw a couple of teams your guys' way. Without Harry Kane, is Tottenham better than Brighton?
Oh, that depends. Does Caicedo stay or go?
No, he's gone.
Gone.
Yeah,
Gone.
Are they better than West Ham?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay. Then, yeah, you look at them in that 10th range.
They're not better than Villa. I mean, they're not better than
Villa. No,
they're not better than any of the top 4 last year, plus Liverpool, plus Villa, plus Brighton. Yeah. That's 7. So, because
I just don't think you can discount losing Lloris either and running him
off. You lose all your leaders. You can't lose all your leaders at the same time. If you can lose a leader at one, here and there and thing, you lose all your leaders all at the same time. Especially after an 8th place finish, it's tough.
I can attest.
And Sean, you mentioned the next team on our list, and that's a team that I know I have as a riser this year, and that's Aston Villa. Finished 7th last year, really finished in good form, qualified for the Europa Conference League playoffs, which will be coming up at the end of the month. And they have the European specialist as a manager in Unai Emery. They brought in Moussa Diaby from Bayern Leverkusen for 57 million. Pau Torres comes in from Villarreal for about 40 million. Again, a team finished really strong last year. They have a manager who, he didn't get it right at Arsenal the first time. He went back to Spain. And, I remember reading the story where he said, I always wanted to come back to England to show that I could do it. And I feel like a back is a better manager. And this Aston Villa team really took off at the end of the season. And it's a team I really like coming into this year.
Well, you talked about Unai Emery being the man at the helm for all those Europa League titles, but the architect is now the man that's up at the board for Villa and Monchi. And he is not afraid to spend cash and bringing the players that both he and Emery have worked with in the past. And those are, again, that key word, winners. I think now when, Mike, you talked about, are they better than teams X, Y, and Z? I think now this is where we start to have that serious conversation of, is Villa right now better than any of those top 4 teams? Are they good enough for 5th? I think there's going to be an improvement, I don't know if it's going to be scratching towards that fifth, but I like this team, though. I agree with you, Kyle. This team excites me a lot.
I love what they've done
Mhm.
this offseason. Emi Buendia went down. It looks like he ruptured his ACL. That's a big loss for them. Looking at Nicolo Zaniolo from Italy and Turkey, guy who is a big prospect. We'll see. I love the Yori Tielemans addition to this midfield. This is a rock solid midfield that has now added a creator with it in Yori Tielemans. I think he's a great addition. Moussa Diaby, we'll see. Sean, I know you in particular are quite familiar with the German goal tax. You know, they don't always translate over. Diaby was great at Leverkusen. We'll see how he does. But I'm a big, big believer in this Villa team. I think they're solid at every position.
When you talk about them, maybe, who are they better than? I mean, they're going to spend money before the window closes. They have to get they're in the Europa Conference League playoffs on August 24th and 31st.
Which it should be noted, by the way, their matchup did come in. They'll be playing the winner of either Hibernian of Scotland or Luzerne of Switzerland.
So they'll be in
Hibs won 3-1 earlier today.
They'll be, that's 6-0. They'll be into that. I think. I mean, you saw what West Ham did last year. They won that. Aston Villa is going to be the best team in that. And that if they take it seriously, I think they win another European trophy. There's nobody that's going to be better in that tournament than them. Once again, though, if they're at the end of the season fighting for Champions League spot, I think it goes. I don't know what they do. My guy Paul Dowling over in Birmingham, he's a big Villa fan. He says they finished. He thinks they're top 2. I don't want to go that high. I think they're better than Brighton. I think now when we get to Brighton and the news that's just broken, I think they're better than. I think that there's a legitimate chance they finish ahead of Newcastle with Newcastle in the Champions League. I think their squad is deeper. I think they could finish ahead of Chelsea. I think their ceiling is probably about 5th. And if something breaks, maybe top 4, but I think they're about 5th and could be 6th. They could be fighting with Chelsea. I think they're 5th, 6th. I think they're firmly in the Europa League spot.
Yeah, I thought long and hard about putting them in Champions League. I thought long and hard about putting them 4th. I didn't. I wound up putting them 6th. But I think with a great manager that they have, one of the most underrated and best goalkeepers in Martinez, great midfield depth, some attacking talent up front. I know you guys mentioned the Buendia injury. That's a tough one. That is going to be someone they're going to have to replace in the next 20 days. But it's a team I like a lot. It's a team that's really talented, and it's a team that I think can definitely make it to Europe next year, whether it's by winning Conference League or finishing top 6.
I think every year, if you want to say, okay, Man City, Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool, if you want to say, okay, we think those are the big 4 right now, based on what they did last year. But every year, there's a team that kind of you look up at Christmas and New Year's that's sort of hanging around that top 4 that maybe you didn't expect to be there, is in that top 4. So Brighton was there last year, right? Kind of all the way to the end of the season. They were on the periphery of it. I think Aston Villa is that team this year. I'm super high on them. I've got Aston Villa 5th, actually. And I think they'll be pushing for those top 4 spots later into the season. I think and maybe eventually they drop off that pace a little bit. But, man, I really like this team. I think Unai Emery has got them going in the right direction. And I'm super excited to see what they do this season.
They're absolutely coming out of this season with a trophy. Whether it be an FA Cup, whether it be an EFL Cup, or whether it be the Conference League Championship. I'm with you, Kyle. I think they're right there in the fight for Champions League. I like this team a lot. I won't tell you what order, but I will tell you in my table, they're in the Champions League.
Okay. Is that a tease, Mike Samsel? Just tease us? Ooh. So Sean actually kind of said a little bit of intriguing news. I think this actually kind of works nicely with the next team that we're going to be talking about in Brighton. We've mentioned them a lot. I mean, what a season they had last year. De Zerbi ball comes in, and they not only took the league by storm last year, they developed a number of really talented players that maybe a lot of us overlooked. I mean, let's be candid here. Brighton, in the past, they couldn't compete with the spending of the Big Six amongst other teams, but their scouting network has been sensational over the last few years. The likes of Matoma, the likes of, yes, we're going to talk about him now, Caicedo, Alexis McAllister. These are players that they've churned out, and they've earned every right to be not only FA Cup semi-finalists last year, sixth position in the Premier League, they're in the Europa League. But yes, Moises Caicedo, he wants to go. The club wanted him to stay, and now it seems that Chelsea were going to have the job done, but Liverpool now, I'm reading from Sky,
105 million to
Liverpool have come in with that huge bid, and Caicedo wanted to go to Chelsea, but he's now open to Liverpool. This has to be done by tomorrow, by the way.
Yeah, they wanted to get his medical tomorrow. I mean, Brighton's not going to turn down 105 million. But the thing about Brighton is they'll take that 105 million and turn it into 4 or 5 players. They have the best scouting department. I mean, City's the best. I mean, they're selling people all over the place for 15, 20 million from the youth. I mean, that's neither here nor there how they're doing that. But this Brighton team is going to find somebody for that. They sold both McAllister and Caicedo here too, and Sanchez. They have Jason Steele already there, which Steele was really playing at the end of the season anyway. Caicedo obviously is a big loss. They bought him for nothing, so they made 100 million profit on him. Same with McAllister. To me, Caicedo is obviously the bigger loss. I think he's the better player. McAllister, I know he was in that Argentina team, but I think he was a little more of Caicedo is more dynamic player to me. He's going to help out Liverpool, obviously there, but you have to see who they're going to spend, to do this. I think if they don't get some of these players in, all of a sudden this squad that wasn't super deep to begin with, now you got to play Europa League, on Thursdays and then go and play on the Premier League. They're not used to playing Europa League and that Thursday, Sundays. I think that's going to be a little bit tougher for them. So we'll see. I have confidence that they're going to spend the money properly because that's what they do.
That was my big question. What Sean mentioned is this also, you talk about Europa League and having to go Thursday, Sunday. This is the first time Brighton has done that, right? First time so it's something that it's a new sort of frontier for them, and how you manage that with your squad depth. And if you continue to progress in that Europa League, how does that affect you in the Premier League, and having to kind of navigate that two fronts as a club, and do they have the depth to be able to do that? That to me is a big question for them. And you can see sometimes clubs, when that happens the first time, they slide down the table, particularly when they're not in a position where they're in Europe every year, where they're spending huge amounts of money like one of the big 6 clubs.
Past performance is the best indicator of future behavior. How many times do we see the little engine that could finish in a European spot, buy a couple of guys, get into those European Thursday, Saturday, Sunday schedules, and plummet right back down the table?
Mm-hmm.
It happened to Leicester. It happened to Fulham. It happened to Burnley.
Happened
and
to Sheffield.
It's going to happen here to Brighton.
Newcastle.
Happened to Newcastle. Yeah. They're going to survive. They'll probably be relatively boring 13th, 14th. And boring's probably unfair because they do play ambitious football. But it's not a team that's going to be at this level because it can't be. They're a selling club, and that's okay. They've developed an unbelievable reputation for themselves. They're almost an English Ajax, if you will, right? They're kind of developing those players, cycling them out, bring in the next generation, develop, cycle them out. But where you see these teams get in trouble is when they start to dive into veteran players like James Milner, players like Mohamed Dahoud. Those are where these type of clubs get themselves into trouble. I don't love Brighton's prospects this year to do much other than survive.
So I'm going to be very interested to see what the rest of the window looks like, because what are they going to do with that Caicedo money? Because that probably will determine their fate of the season. Because I've had this thought in the back of my mind for a while. If they don't do much with the money, will they just perhaps say, okay, we're going to play the kids in Europa League? Because at the end of the day, it's not like we're talking about Champions League money where, if you get out of the group stage, you're going to be getting much more cash. In the Europa League, you get a little money, but you still also have to make those long flights to places unknown. So it depends. It depends on how big their squad is, depends on how deep their squad is. If they don't use enough of that money in the right places, or they just say, you know what, our focus is very much on the league. If we get through the Europa League group stage, great, but we're not going to make that a concern. Or they spend that money and say, you know what, we're going to try and give it our best on the all fronts, and that's where we see teams diving into those spirals. I'd personally like them to maybe use that Thursday to develop their kids, in essence, and then focus on the league. Yeah, Mike.
And Stu, just last thing, a name I want to put out there, a guy they've been linked to quite a bit is Mohamed Kudus, guy who had a pretty decent World Cup, a guy who plays for Ajax. If that's a perfectly Brighton type of player, if he comes in, they'll be fine. He'll be their player of the season.
I'll just say this before we wrap up the Brighton discussion. Now with the caveat, the kind of the carrot of a Europa League champion getting into the Champions League, I do think that changes the way you approach that Europa League competition now. Like, I understand that, you got to balance your squad, and maybe you do that in the group stage there a little bit. But once you get into the knockout rounds of that, I think you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your club, to your supporters, that you go for it, especially with that financial reward of the Champions League carrot being hung there at the end. That said, I do think Brighton takes a small step back this year. 6th last year. I got Brighton 9th this year, solidly in the mid table.
Me too. Yeah. I have him 9th as well.
All right. Yep. All right. On to the juicy stuff. Are we ready? All right.
Who's next?
Oh, who's next? Sean. Oh man, Sean, you're not like this. Liverpool. But okay, so here we go. As we just talked about it.
I always forget we're still in the Europa League.
All right, Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. Obviously, we've seen that 5th last year. They've qualified for the Europa League again. As we just kind of discussed, Caicedo sounds like it's headed that way, that he's going to be coming in. They've also added Szoboszlai from RB Leipzig, and they've already done business with Brighton once. $43 million for Alexis McAllister. He had a great year for the Seagulls. He's coming off a year in which he was a World Cup champion. And look, we'll turn it over to our resident Liverpool supporter, Stu Kovacs.
Yeah, obviously last year was a disappointment. To say is a disappointment is an understatement. I mean, to finish 5th with the talent that this squad had was very disappointing. They desperately needed some midfield help. They've gotten some of that midfield help with the likes of, like you said, Kyle, McAllister, and Szoboszlai, who are both very talented players. The thing for me is they need more. They need Caicedo, which seems like it's a likelihood that's going to happen now. I think that'll be big for them because they need that defensive presence in the middle of the midfield. I mean, in the preseason, they've been playing Curtis Jones at the 6, or else playing Trent Alexander-Arnold as the 6 and using someone else as the right back. It's been kind of a disaster with the midfield, losing 5 of their most 6 senior guys. And the changes had to be made. I mean, these guys were all getting over the hill. Naby Keita barely played. Oxlade-Chamberlain barely played. Fabinho's on his last legs. Henderson's on his last legs. So they needed to revamp. So for me, if they do get Caicedo and they do get another center, they need another defender. They need a center back that can push the likes of Konate and Matip, another guy who's older. And if they're going to invert Trent Alexander-Arnold like they did towards the end of last season, they're going to need help on the back end. So I think if they get Caicedo, get another a center back or a defensive player, I do think they can return to Champions League. But we'll see. I never have a lot of confidence in Fenway Sports Group. They've kind of been, messing around for a while now. But if they make this move, I think it'll be a big move, and they will be back in Champions League.
Stu, question for you. and it was a topic that was talked about a lot last season, Jurgen Klopp. I mean, this is a guy that is known to never really stay that long at a project. He has been at Liverpool for quite some time now. He's experienced the highs, but usually when things go south, and it's not just him, there's plenty of managers that have said, okay, project's done, on to the next. If they don't make Champions League this season, whether that's traditionally finishing the top 4 or winning Europa League, do you think that it's time just to move on?
If they don't make Champions League this season, I think it'll be the last season for not only Klopp but Mo Salah as well. I think he will go to Saudi. He'll take the Saudi money. Klopp will take a year off and then either coach the German team or find another job. I do agree with that 100%. If they can't manage to finish top 4 with all of the talent they've brought in, especially up top, and now they're revamping the midfield, I think if they finish 5th or 6th, it's going to be problematic for Klopp, and I don't think he'll be back.
I mean, I think Stu's pretty much hit everything that we really need to. The only thing that I would probably add is I don't think as of right now that team is good enough to beat any of the top 4, the current or the most recent top 4. I think their only route to Champions League is going to be winning the Europa League.
I disagree with that because I think a lot of it depends on the health of Luis Diaz.
Fair,
I think Luis Diaz, if he was healthy last year, they would have been in Champions League. And if he's healthy this year and he returns to form, not only do I think they get back to Champions League, but I think that Mo Salah burden starts to lighten a little bit. And I think this starts to transition away from being Mo Salah's club and transition into being Luis Diaz's.
I'd like to see them get a big year out of Darwin Núñez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wasn't nearly as bad as the internet makes it seem last year.
No, he wasn't.
Their first 6, by the way, away to Chelsea, excuse me, home to Bournemouth, away to Newcastle, home to Villa, away to Wolves, and then West Ham home. I mean, if you're not taking at minimum 9 points from that, where there are 9 points at least gettable from that, if you can get more than that, then I'd very much say, okay, yeah, season probably on. If you get less than that, I think there are real problems.
We've seen them start slow before as well.
We have, but I think even then, with the amount of teams that they have kind of coming up in the middle of the season, it could be a tough one.
All right, everyone, clear out. Let Sean say nice things about Liverpool.
I think everyone thinks I'm going to say, they're going to finish. I wish they'd finish 20th, but there's no way. This team is too good now. They got the midfield is good. Casado, he's a player. I mean, he's a good player. McAllister helps them. Their midfield is better. Trent might play in the midfield apparently. The squad isn't that bad. Liverpool, if you look, I mean, they cycle a little bit. He goes through these little cycles. I don't know how seriously. I'd be interested to see how seriously they take the Europa League in the first. They should be able to play some backups and walk through the group stage. And obviously, I don't know if you want to get into a playoff like Manchester United had to do, and then they had to beat Barcelona, and then you go on. But I mean, I don't. I think they're top 4. I think they're. I'm gonna say like 3rd. I think they finished top 4, and I think they finished 3rd, 4th. I just think they're too good. The squad's good. That guy, Núñez is gonna score goals. Salah's gonna score goals. Diaz will be healthy. They're getting some players back. They got Gakpo who's gonna score some goals. They have a midfield now. Their midfield was terrible last year. That was why they weren't. And the defense wasn't great, but the midfield was the problem. That was the issue. Their midfield now is solid, so they'll finish top 4. I think they're 3rd or 4th.
I agree. I've got them 4th. I still believe in Klopp, and I think Liverpool gets back into the top 4 this year, and I got them finishing 4th.
Stu, do you think it helps that some of those guys that Klopp might have felt a loyalty to or kind of an obligation to have cycled out of the club, and now he can pick maybe what he feels is his best 11 instead of guys he feels obligated to?
Yes. James Milner should have been gone a year or 2 before. Firmino was just never healthy the last 2 years. Really, after the year they won the league, he hasn't been healthy. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Naby Keita, again, guys that were barely healthy the last couple of years. And it even feels like Klopp wanted James Milner back, wanted Firmino back. So maybe it's more of the fact that ownership, I think, might have stepped in and said, okay, it's time to let these guys walk. I think it was helpful, but I think they definitely needed to move on from a lot of those veteran guys. Now, I would have kept Henderson around as kind of that Milner role to kind of, teach some of these younger guys. That's the one thing I do worry about the midfield is, other than Thiago, you really do have a lot of new blood, guys that are new to the league, new experience, I should say. So that's one little concern I have. But yeah, they definitely needed to get rid of some of these older guys.
Well, as we now discussed previously, if they want to get into Champions League, they potentially are going to have to jump one of these 4 teams that we're going to be discussing. And the first one that we go to is the team that took everybody by storm in some sense of, well, they spent all that money because of the new ownership that they had, and boy, they spent it. And they certainly delivered the goods. That would be Newcastle United, finished 4th last season. Newcastle, thus far, they've already spent a bit of money. Sandro Tonali for 55 mil, Harvey Barnes for 38, Tino Livramento for 35 mil. There could be more on the way. The only man that has gone thus far, at least in terms of any sort of substance, Alan Saint-Maximin with 28. Eddie Howe, I mean, what can you say? We knew the job that he's done previously, could be one of the best managers in that league, and he delivered the goods once again. I think the big question for me right now, guys, and I know it's kind of something that you could speak to with City, for example, amongst a few others. Man, they've got a lot of high-priced talent on that team that they've got to keep happy. Now, the good news is they do have Champions League in addition to Premier League, so there is room for rotation. They didn't have a blip last year that I thought that they could, because sometimes you see that from teams that haven't been in that top tier for a while. You have a great start, little issue, obviously, with the World Cup last year. It could have been very nicely built in for them, but they kept going, and now they're top 4. What do we think? Do they thrive in this? Do they even spend more money than they already have? It's going to be a strange one.
They're going to spend money in January if they're they're probably going to spend money in January either way. But if they're struggling, if someone's there, they'll buy. I don't know. I'm not as high on this squad as I think maybe some other people are. I like Isak a lot. I think he's going to score some goals. Callum Wilson's hurt a lot. I know Guimaraes, he's a good player, but he's had some injuries. I don't love their midfield. I'm not as high on this team as a lot of people are. I thought they really, really massively overachieved last year. They got to the Carabao Cup final, obviously, and lost to Manchester United. I think when they go to the Champions League, you've seen they haven't been in a long time. When you go, this is a new team and you get into this Champions League and you're playing Tuesday, Saturday, you're playing Wednesday night, in Italy, and you have to come back and they're putting you on at 7:30 in the morning, the 12:30 kickoff on Saturday. And, they're complaining about it because that's what they do. I mean, Klopp talks about it all the time. The Premier League puts these teams in the TV slots, so it's going to happen. They're going to drop some points maybe last year. And the other thing about their thing, when you looked at their results last year, I mean, they got into the top 4, but I mean, they drew so many matches. You can't draw they had 14 draws. At some point, Liverpool's better. Aston Villa's better. You can't draw 14 matches. I don't think you can draw 14 matches again this year and get into the top 4. I think you're going to have to convert those to wins, because City is better, Arsenal's better, Manchester United's better, Liverpool's better, Aston Villa's better. So I'm not as high on them as some people are.
I think you could take this same thing I said about Brighton and apply it to Newcastle, with this being a first run through Europe, except in the Champions League, you got to play your guys right in the group stage. You can't rotate, your backups in through the group stage. Like you got to play your top guys, and then you got to turn around and play a Premier League game that weekend. So again, that's going to be a challenge for them. I do love Eddie Howe. I'll say this, I thought that was such a smart hire that Newcastle made when they did, because when they got that influx of cash from the Saudi deal, when the new ownership group came in, they could have gone out and gone for a Jose Mourinho, right, type of manager. Maybe an older manager whose star is fading a little bit, right? They could have gone out and signed older players whose maybe, again, star was fading a little bit. And I actually thought they invested that money in their squad wisely, first of all, by hiring Eddie Howe, and then with some of the players they brought in. And I thought he, and I think you'll see it a little bit in the Amazon documentary that's coming out. That they're doing that's going to be on Newcastle. From Newcastle's season last year, and I think you'll see the job. I've seen the trailer for it. You'll see the job Eddie Howe did in molding that squad and getting them to play together. And look, that fan base there was craving a winner, and they got it last year. And I think that fan base is totally behind this club, and I think that's going to help them as well. Do I think they're going to get back to the top four? I don't know. I think maybe they get worn down a little bit by the Europe. I got them just outside. I think they could qualify for one of the secondary competitions. I've got them 6.
Just real quickly, too, the one thing, they're going to be in pot 4 in the Champions League because they haven't been in Europe in 11 years. So, pot 1 is City, Sevilla, Barcelona, Napoli, Bayern Munich, PSG, Benfica, Feyenoord. Pot 2 is, it might be even more brutal, Real Madrid, Manchester United, Inter Milan, Dortmund, Atletico Madrid, Leipzig, Porto, Arsenal. They're going to be in a pot where they might have to play, 3 brutal teams, twice. So, hey, maybe they get through, maybe they don't. If they get into, if they get knocked into the Europa League, all of a sudden now you're playing Thursday, Sunday in the second half, and that changed your whole season.
They're also going to be the pot 4 team though that nobody wants to.
Yeah, no, I think nobody will want to play them, but if they're in a pot with Barcelona, Inter, I don't even know, so it's going to be interesting. Obviously, they can't get Manchester United and Arsenal, but yeah, no, I think that could play into it as well.
Mike, go ahead.
I do think there's a lot to be nervous about with this team. One of the things that I think is huge for them, and it's not just because I'm a homer, though I'm a homer. Harvey Barnes is a huge acquisition for this team. I saw a lot of people online kind of slagging on Harvey and saying why are they not going after Moussa Diaby and they're getting Harvey Barnes. Harvey Barnes creates a ton of opportunities. And with Anthony Gordon there as well, the biggest thing that Harvey Barnes allows them to do is it allows Isak to be in his best position, which is a striker. They don't have to play him outside anymore. So if Callum Wilson gets hurt, now that's a little less of an issue because Isak can still play striker. You have Chris Wood to come on and be that big physical body. As I talk through Newcastle, I'm probably going to contradict myself here like 4 or 5 times because there are things that I like about them and things I don't like about them. The one thing that I am very curious of is their huge offseason acquisition was Sandro Tonali. Every big game I've seen Sandro Tonali play, I've seen him get bullied.
And he doesn't want to be
small
there.
For a holding mid.
He doesn't even want to be there.
Yeah. He's small for a holding mid. And Premier League, those big forwards, players like that, I think Tonali could really struggle to adjust to this league. The other thing I would keep an eye on, we talked about everyone overachieving last year. Listen, I'm sure he's a fine fella. Dan Burn had the season of his life. That's not going to happen again.
And Joe Linton, too.
Yeah, and Joe Linton, too. They're linked to some guys. If they bring in a Gonçalo Inácio from Portugal or one of those guys, we'll see if they do any more business before the window. My one personal piece of advice to them would be stay away from Neymar. Don't get involved with that.
Cool.
I like this team. I don't think they're a top 4 team. However, I think they win the Europa League.
Oh, sure. I'm just going to add in 2 quick cents because I know we still got a few more teams and we've carried on for a little over an hour already. Let's not forget, by the way, that that Champions League for next season, it's going to change because there's going to be the addition of more teams. Top 5, I believe, as long as the club coefficients stay the same, gets into the Champions League. So they might not need to finish 4th and still qualify for Champions League without winning the Europa League. That's for another day. But what I do like, I know, Dan Byrne did play out of his mind last year. And you know what? I enjoyed it because I enjoy when individual players just ball out. And you know what? He probably in his wildest dreams, obviously his dreams to play Champions League, but the reality is he probably wasn't thinking ever of playing Champions League. He's going to be there. I like what Eddie Howe has done where he's basically kind of built units within each of the 3 lines, knowing that he's going to have to rotate, and he already kind of has the pairings that he wants for different games, and he might just literally roll out 2 different 11s, which is something that City's kind of done in the past, and guess what? It's worked for them, as we'll get to that in a bit. I'm actually more optimistic, I think, than the collective here. I think they stay top 4. It might not be as straightforward as it was last season because now everybody knows about it. But if there's going to be a problem, they're going to spend the money, as we said in January. I think they finish 4th again.
Yeah, I thought about putting them 4th. I wound up putting them 5th. One thing I will say is I do like the Livramento edition. Trippier's 32. He's still a very good right back. But Livramento brings them a little something different, someone that's a little more pacey, someone that is a better dribbler. So I think that addition, especially with the added games of Champions League, will help them. But yeah, in the end, I think they finished 5th. That would be my prediction for them.
I would say 5th or 6th. I think Villa, Chelsea, Newcastle about the same. And I think Villa, probably Newcastle. I would say probably 6th if you had to pin me down.
Okay, I'm going to put this next one on a T and then let Sean and JJ do their thing. But Manchester United, 3rd place last year, so they're in the Champions League. They were the EFL Cup winners. They were finalists in the FA Cup. They made a change at goalkeeper. Andre Onana is in after $59 million from Inter Milan. David De Gea is out. He's a free agent. They've also brought in Mason Mount from Chelsea for $69 million. And Rasmus Højlund, that's not Holland, that's Højlund from Atlanta. Højlund. He's 76. I'll get the pronunciation correct eventually. That's
Højlund.
That's 76 million. He is injured right now. They've got some injuries in the squad. But I'll turn it over to Sean and JJ to break down Manchester United.
Yeah, look, I mean, Højlund, you don't pronounce the D. It's Højlund.
Not Holland.
Højlund. So
you wish you had Holland.
He'll be ready he's training, so he'll be ready probably for the Arsenal match. Which is I think the 3rd game. I think Ahmad's not a huge injury. He's out for his 20. He's going to go on loan anyway. Anthony Martial looks like maybe Inter's coming in for him. Look, the signings are great. Like Onana, first of all, De Gea gone. The signings are great, but the bigger thing to me is getting rid of all the trash. He started to get rid of some of it last year. To get rid of these guys that didn't really win a lot, and they were just part of this like terrible squad. De Gea's gone, Tell's gone, Alanga's gone, Maguire's gone, Fred's gone. McTominay might go for West Ham spending money like crazy. Anthony Martial's gone. So now you have guys like Garnacho. Kobe Mainu will come in and play when he's healthy. Like I think he'll help, but they're going to bring somebody else in midfield. I think after they start selling some players, but it was more important for me to get rid of all these guys. Like Maguire, getting rid of Maguire and giving the armband to somebody else was just as important as the guys they're going to bring in. They won a trophy. It was huge. One of my best days out in England, winning that. They're going to spend some money. Donny van der Beek is going to go. I mean, the guys that are going, they're not the guys you are going to ever win with. You need to build guys. You need a squad that can compete with Manchester City. And now you see what Liverpool's doing. They're on the way to doing that. I'd like to see kind of who else they bring in here. Todibo or, Amrabat or whatever. Pavard. They're linked with a lot of players. They're probably going to bring some players in. I think it's going to be. I don't think you're going to see those kind of games last year where you just got absolutely demolished. Some of those guys in the squad once again. Some of the trash is gone. Obviously I'm going to say I'm high on them, but haven't been as high on them lately. Last 5 or 6 years since we started doing box to box. The last time. So I think they're in a decent spot.
Okay, is this my turn now?
Yeah.
Yep. You're the United fan.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple of differing views on some individuals. First off, I know a lot of people have given Harry Maguire the absolute just run of the mill for so many years. For a guy, we don't ever live in professional footballers' shoes. The guy served his club as faithfully as he could for all these years with all these people throwing stuff at him. And you know what? At times I thought he did quite well. Yeah, I'm obviously disappointed to see him go, but I'm always going to value people who do their job to the best of their abilities and stay as loyal as possible. Same thing with David De Gea. It was more time for me with De Gea to go, but I also think that he, over the years and over some of the bad times, he was a reason. I mean, he was basically Henrik Lundqvist with the Rangers circa 2015 through 18, where he saved that team on way too many occasions, and De Gea did the same thing. I'm a little disappointed on Diallo getting hurt because I thought that he had a really good preseason coming off of an outstanding season last year with Sunderland, who was in the team of the year in the championship. With that being said, we learned a couple of things last year. Bruno Fernandes is obviously one of the most talented midfielders in the league, and he is the right man to be wearing that armband. And Casemiro is an absolute Rolls Royce of a player, and he could be in that lineup for however long he chooses to be in that lineup. The continuity, yes, Sean, I think I agree with you on that. It has to be better. They did have that run of 19 and 20 where they did get positive results, which was probably the reason why they could have had that little bit of a slip towards the back half of or the back quarter of the season, where they had some of those tougher outings. That needs to go in some aspect, because Onana did come to the camp so late. I'm curious to see how he just settles in. Also knowing now that Tom Heaton got hurt, so it looks like Dean Henderson is going to be staying. How long he stays, that's still really up in the air, but see how those two kind of get on. And yeah, I think for me, it's, can you take that next step in continuity, Mike Samsel? And if they do, then yeah, they could push for second place.
When you order Holland on wish.com, you get Hoyland.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had the opportunity to get Holland and you let it slip because you didn't want to pay the agent fee. I know we can rattle on about that forever.
He's going to be at Real Madrid next year, though, anyway. So
my biggest problem with Man United, and it's been my biggest problem with them for the last 5 years. Who has been the young player that has gone to Man United and gotten better? I'll wait.
Garnacho?
He was an academy kid. I'm talking about guys that
you're talking about young players.
They brought him in from Atletico Madrid.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah.
Then that's one out of a wasteland of young players that have gone to there and floundered, if not regressed.
It's a completely good argument.
Yeah. Everybody was disappointed in Anthony. I think everybody's been massively disappointed in Sancho. Now you guys have had the money, and now you have the coach to get yourself out of that, right? The Glazers are spending enough that you can be competitive enough. Ten Hag's a good coach. You got yourself a Rolls Royce in Casemiro and Fernandez. They're great players there. This isn't a slight of Man United, but there are tiers to the Premier League now, and I don't think you've cracked into that top tier yet. So the ceiling is probably third, and you're in that tier with Liverpool and Newcastle United. Aston Villa has to prove they belong in that tier, but Aston Villa trying to fight their way into that tier as well. Sean, you're right. They have cycled out a lot of the Freds and guys like that, which I think is good. You know, guys that serve the club, but just weren't at the level that Manchester United want them to be. Kyle, I like this team, but there are just teams that I like more. And the reason that there are teams that I like more are because the transfers that Man United bring in, with the exception of Casemiro, I'm really speaking about the younger guys here, they always feel like they disappoint. And so I have no reason to believe that Højlund is going to come in and develop when there's a wasteland behind him.
Didn't they lose their first 2 games last year?
Yes.
Yes.
I remember I texted Sean. I said, Ten Hag out. Obviously,
I was at the game. They lost 2-1. They lost 2-1 to Brighton, and they lost 4-0 to Brentford. Then they brought Casemiro in. Look, they brought Lisandro Martinez in, who's a superstar.
Very good. Very good.
Look, but I actually think Ten Hag's a very good coach, and he's starting to get a squad that he likes. He's molding it in the image he wants it. I think this Manchester United team is. I don't know if they're going to win the title with City and Arsenal maybe coming into the year is 1-2, but I think they're going to hang on the periphery of that title race. I think they'll stay within arm's distance of those teams. I just don't know if they're going to be able to overcome that. I've got Manchester United to third.
Stu.
I have Manchester United second. I think they are better than Arsenal. I think moving on from De Gea, I think bringing in a new goalie, I think bringing in Højlund, I think that'll help them. I'm not a crazy Mason Mount guy. When he was linked to Liverpool, I wasn't over the moon about bringing him in. I think it's a bit of an overpay, but I think it's an upgrade. I think it's a good player as long as they can find the right position for him. Fernandes is one of the best midfielders in the sport. I crapped on them when they brought in Casemiro. I thought he was over the hill. I did not understand that move. It was a great move. He brought stability to that midfield. And now you have a full year of Ten Hag. So I think they're better than Arsenal. I think they finished second in the league this year.
Sean, last word.
I think they finished second, but I can see them finishing third. Mount is an upgrade on Christian Eriksen. They played Christian Eriksen, who collapsed and died, and then was brought back to life on the pitch, and was still kind of working back into it. They played him. They ran him into the ground at the beginning of the season last year. He played like 30 matches, and then he ended up getting hurt. Mason Mount. I just think that the defense is better without some of the guys that are there. So I think second. They could finish third, but I say second. I also think they're better than Arsenal.
Okay, Mike.
I've got them fifth. I think they're the team that Aston Villa passes.
Okay, Dr. No Fun over there. I've got them second, but it's going to be a distant second place, which means that they'll be topping the next team that we'll be talking about, which is Arsenal. And you know what? I didn't think that they would be holding on to the lead in the league last year as long as they did. And credit to them because they kept fighting and fighting, but eventually, as they say, the class comes to the top, and City reeled them in like a well-seasoned trout, and it was a lovely dinner for the team up in the blue side of Manchester. But Arsenal, look, I mean, it's another quality squad. They run back 4 of their 10-plus goal scorers from a season ago. They brought in Declan Rice, which was the move that it was really not so secret. They were willing to spend as much cash as they wanted to make sure that they got him in. Timber in Havertz, which for me, I'm actually still a little surprised on that one. Does he fit into that attacking sequence? Probably. Will it work? I'm not so sure about that. I think this could be a tough year for them. Not tough, but now Champions League as opposed to Europa League, it could just be a little tough for them. Mike.
Stu, turn on the Twitter camera. Arsenal's either winning the league or the Champions League this year.
I mean, it's not a bad shout.
I love this team. I love the offseason business that they did. I think Raya's going to thrive there. I love their back 4. They clearly have a strategy. The way bringing in Jorian Timber, he fits in well. Saliba, we were talking about Rolls Royces with Casemiro. Saliba might be one of the best defenders in all of Europe. He's really, really strong. Ben White starting to settle into that right back position there. We'll see if they can get the help that they need on the left side with Kieran Tierney and guys like that. Leandro Trossard is not going to be a guy that wins you the Champions League, but I think he's been an outstanding addition. Declan Rice, obviously, to come back in and kind of quarterback that midfield. I have always been someone who bites on Kai Havertz. Listen, everybody is going to sit here and say what they're going to say about Kai Havertz. Kai Havertz has scored a Champions League winning goal. Not a go-ahead goal, a Champions League winning goal. He's not going to have to play center forward on this team. He's going to be able to settle into that 10 role, which is where he thrived in Germany. And now he's going to have an opportunity to do it with a fresh start. This team is too deep across the board. They can trot out 2 starting lineups that are very good. Jesus needs to get healthy. They may need maybe a bit of help in striker. We'll see if Balogun is someone that can step in and help them there and stay with the club. I'm falling for it. You're all going to laugh at me at the end of the season when they finish 6th and are eliminated in the group stage of Champions League. I see no way this team doesn't win not just a trophy this year, a major trophy.
It's all obviously the Community Shield is a glorified friendly. It is not a major trophy. But I thought Arsenal beating Man City even in a shootout was something that Arsenal needed for its psyche, particularly after Man City reeled them in the way it did last year and really blew past them at the end of the year. I think to come out and first of all, they went behind in that game, and then they showed a little bit of character to come back and get level and then win in a shootout. I thought that was something that Arsenal, frankly, needed. Manchester City, probably not. But I thought that's probably good for Arsenal's psyche coming into the season. And the other thing is Saka is a player whom I love, plays out on that right-hand side. He can take you on. He can get past you. He can cut in on his left foot and score from there if he has to. He was a guy who, I think he was in the England side. I thought he had a real breakout season last year. Can he become not just a star, but a superstar this year with Arsenal in the Champions League? And I think he's got the ability to do that. And if Saka has a superstar season, Arsenal's got a chance to win the league.
Good shouts.
Wow,
And there it is.
Look,
like a true
their collapse
Manchester
just
United
happened. Their
supporter.
collapse happened just a little bit later than it usually does. Usually it's February and March. It happened in April last year. Look, when you're not in any European competitions and you're only playing once a week, when everybody else is, having to take that World Cup break and you're playing in, 65 games. Manchester City played 61 matches last year. Manchester United played 57 matches last year. When you're only playing, 30, 42 or whatever, because, you get knocked out everything early. I think it's a little bit. I want to see how they do it this year. And I also think at some point that lack of a target guy is going to, I know they get goals from all over the place, but I think that lack of a target guy is going to come and hurt them a little bit. I think they'll finish top 4. I think I have them 4th, but I just think that what they really need to do is solidify a Champions League spot this year. If they don't, I just City's ridiculous. They have 2 squads full of players. If they need to solidify, they can't go into the season and finish 5th or 6th. They have to be in a Champions League spot at the end of this year to keep building and moving forward. So I think they will, but there wasn't a lot between them and some of the teams behind them last year. I thought they played really well for the first 5 months, and then they started to kind of regress. So we'll see if they can do that again to start like that.
I just have one kind of prediction that I have. It's not so much of a placement type thing. They're going to have to make a decision at the beginning of 2024. The decision is, what do we go for? Is it going to be the league or is it going to be Champions League? Mike, you're 100% right. They've got the depth to do it both. I just think it's going to behoove them to make a decision. If they get out of the groups, or if they don't get out of the group stage, then the decision is already there. I think depending on the draw, I think shouldn't be a problem for them. But I think they need to value what's more important for them, both for the club, for the profits, and also just for what, this current system under Arteta. You need a trophy, and there's the two major pathways to do it. I think for them, if they get out of Champions League group stage, they should go for that competition still.
Yeah, I think they finished third. I think they're right, like very tick below Man United. They're right there with Man United. I just think they're maybe 2 or 3 points behind United. I think, as you guys already kind of alluded to, I think the Champions League does hurt them a little bit in terms of, all the games they're going to have to play and the quality of competition. And also, as Sean alluded to, I just think it's a little too much pressure on Gabriel Jesus. I just think they could use another striker, someone to step up. Maybe it's Balogun.
Well, maybe they should give Balogun a chance. They keep saying they value him at $45 million, but you value him at $45 million, but you don't value him to put him on the field for you.
Yeah.
Like, what gives guys? Gabriel Jesus is hurt, and obviously I want to see him do well now that he's committed his future to the U.S. national team. But you need a striker, right? So either play him or sell him, but stop giving this, we value him at 45, 50 million. Well, if you value that, then put him on the field.
That's fair. Very fair.
I got Arsenal second, by the way. As we wrap it up and we head to the final team in our Premier League preview, you all know who it is. It's last year's treble winners, Pep Guardiola's Manchester City, Premier League champs, FA Cup winners, and for the first time, the Champions League winners. They've done some business here in the summer. They brought in Vardiol from RB Leipzig, $77.5 million, the world's most expensive defender. And Mateo Kovacic comes over from Chelsea, $25 million. Obviously, anytime you have Man City, you have the financial fair play. They've got all sorts
115 charges.
Yes, they have all kinds of financial fair play charges hanging over their head. That said, going for an unprecedented fourth consecutive Premier League title. It's never been done in the Premier League era before. So, guys, I'll pose the question to you. Does it happen?
Who cares? They're in 5 years from now, when all these things go, it's all proven that they did all this stuff. Nobody in Manchester really cares because they know it's all been done on the back of, falsities and everything. They've been skirting this. So, they're going to win the league. They have 2 squads of players. I don't think they win the Champions League. I think somebody else wins it. They won't go back to back there, but they'll win the league pretty easily.
Gundogan was pretty important to this team.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah. Ilkay Gundogan being replaced by Mateo Kovacic is a massive drop-off. I don't think that's something you can discount.
Gundogan was a big game player, too.
Yeah.
Like you had a big game. You knew he was going to pop up in the right spot and score you a goal or come up with the pass leading to a goal. So yeah, that's a major loss for them.
And as bitter as I am to mention it, Riyad Mahrez is a big loss for them.
He faded a little bit at the end of last season in terms of his usage, but he was a very useful player for them.
Now, if you're looking at replacing those guys with Michael Olise, Jeremy Doku, some of the guys they've been linked to, maybe Paqueta comes over from West Ham United, then all of a sudden you start to kind of replace those guys and cycle in that next generation. We all know how good Vardiol is. He's going to be a massive addition to that back line. It's going to cycle out probably Nathan Ake, put him in the position where he can be a second team player. But look at all of the massive moments that Man City has had over the last 3 years. Going back to the Champions League final that they lost, a lot of them rotate around Gundogan, and I don't think you easily replace that. Even if you have Man City's money, you don't easily replace that.
And I think also to add to that as well, not so much of the guys that are in the team right now, because obviously that's a great environment that Pep has fostered over these years. But we've also noticed over the last couple seasons that they tend to have, let's call it like a 2 week, we're just going to let this slide. We're not really, that concerned about it. And the results kind of maybe keep things in the conversation a little bit. What you're talking about with Gundogan not there anymore, if they have those, and Gundogan was always featured no matter what, but especially in those moments where you needed a guy to just pick you up a little bit. And yes, you have a robot in Holland who could score a million goals a season, because all you have to do is just tee it up to that meaty forehead that he has. Sorry, Olivier Giroud, but Holland has the much meatier forehead right now. If they have slip ups, can other teams find a way to make those slip ups longer? Because that over the last couple of years, they really haven't been challenged when they're at their peak. They haven't really had to dig down all that much to get there. I know, obviously, Sean and I speak for the red half of Manchester, and sorry if Sean's mention of the 115 financial fair play counts that will probably get you guys, sorry, has upset any of our listeners on the blue side of Manchester, because please stick with us. We love those listens, and make sure to give us great reviews as well. 5 stars, please, and thank you very much. If they don't capitalize on those slip ups, that being the other team, then other teams in City are going to cruise. But if you do have 3-week long lapses, then all of a sudden somebody could be there to catch you. I don't know if it's going to go till April, but it could just make things a little interesting. That's all.
It could. You've just got to be so good to catch Man City.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's just, you can't have any slip ups yourself. So, your Manchester City might have a little low, and maybe you play great for a month if you're Liverpool or you're United or Arsenal, but man, you can't have any slip ups yourself in order to catch City, and that's why I think City is just, the squad depth, the talent. There's only one Erling Haaland, and he plays for Manchester City, and he is going to score a bunch of goals again, and he is just so difficult for anybody. That there's not anybody in the world who can handle him, especially when City is firing on all cylinders. I think they win the Premier League for an unprecedented 4th consecutive time. I just don't see anybody stopping them. I know Arsenal gave it a good run, but last year, but man, the way that Man City team finished, it just blew by them. I think it's hats off. Pep, terrific manager. And he's going to cement his legacy as, arguably the all-time greatest manager by winning a 4th straight Premier League this year.
Yeah, I think they win the league, and I think they win it by at least 10 points.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why that'd be challenged. I think it actually could be that year where Jose said about United that coaching that team to 2nd place finish was his greatest ever achievement, and United were 19 by like 19 points. Yeah, I think it could be that margin again, because I think Arsenal, as I alluded to a little, or it might not be that much, but I think Arsenal will have to make a choice, and I think personally that going for Champions League title might be in their better interests.
They didn't even lead the league until the end last year, and they won almost by 10 points. And they had to chase down Arsenal if they actually played to their potential.
Alrighty. So for those that have stuck with us here for minute 94, which is also, we still have another 10 minutes of stoppage time, because remember, by the way, folks, we're now going to World Cup levels of stoppage time. So get ready for playing into the 105th minute of games.
We're in Fergie time.
Well, we're way past Fergie time right now. We're in Infantino time. Love to get some predictions from everybody. Now we have the usuals, the Golden Boot, the Player of the Year, Keeper of the Year, who's going to win the sack race, as in who's going to get fired. If anyone has a bold prediction, or even for our EFL Championship correspondent, Mike Samsel, who will be the teams that will come up, I'll probably want to get into that one as well. But Sean, let's hear your Player of the Year for the Premier League.
I mean, it's probably going to be Holland, but if he gets hurt or something, and Manchester United finishes 2nd, maybe Bruno Fernandes. He's in the middle of everything. My keeper of the year is going to be Onana, so I think he's going to I think he's going to make a difference. But I think that defense is going to be more short up. But if City wins the league and Haaland scores 30 goals, it's going to be Haaland. So,
all right, Stu, I like you
Yeah.
for the golden boot. If it's not going to be Haaland, is it? Who?
If it's not going to be Haaland, it'll be Salah. But I do think it'll be Haaland. Bold prediction, I will say David Moyes is the first manager to get sacked during the regular season.
Yeah, I was about to say because Lopetegui's already been
Yeah, I
sacked.
did say if something he doesn't count.
Doesn't count.
We're going to go David Moyes.
Fair enough. Kyle, over to you. Let's go best defensive record and keeper of the year.
Best defensive record is going to be Manchester City. They're just not good. Ederson is probably the best goalkeeper in the league. Now he doesn't get tested all that often because of the players he has in front of him and the way City plays and the way they keep the ball. City will have the best defensive record. Keeper of the year. Can I make a homer pick and take Matt Turner, who I think is going to really excel. I love everything about his story. He didn't start playing until he was 14 years old. He was a baseball player who just kind of, stumbled into soccer by accident, and just the way he has risen and the way he carries himself. That he's, the number one goalkeeper now for the national team, and now he's got an opportunity to go to Nottingham Forest. It looks like he's going to get a chance here to be the number one there, to play every day. He's certainly going to see a lot of shots. And we know he's a terrific shot stopper. And I think Matt Turner's going to have a terrific year, and he's a guy who's easy to root for. So it's a homer pick, but I'll say that.
I'll do my sack race because I think it actually could be a little closer than we think. Everyone would say Paul Heckingbottom for Sheffield United because, let's face it, that could be a challenge.
It'd be like the third time they fired him anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But I also think as well, because of the more exodus that we've seen from Palace, it's not so much that Roy is going to leave because he gets fired. I think he might just see nothing positive coming from this season, and maybe he might just identify. I think, Mike, you actually said this in our last episode, that maybe there could be someone that comes through all of a sudden says, yeah, this guy might be better for the project. So that would be the honorable thing to do. So it's going to be a little bit tighter in there. And now over to our EFL Championship correspondent, Michael Samsel, for our teams that will get promoted, which we know one of them will be your beloved Leicester City.
Okay, first of all, words hurt, and I didn't appreciate that. Okay.
What? Whoa, why?
Quickly, though, I just do want to give
there whatsoever. Serious.
If Olise moves to Man City, he's going to be in discussion for Player of the Year. I think of him that highly. Championship, Leicester does not give a single solitary bleep about defense. Not one. I'm curious to see if that will bite them or not, but they're just so much more talented than everyone else in the league. It's kind of hard to imagine that they're not going to win that league running away. And I was a little nervous about it going in, but having seen some of the championship teams, and I actually think pretty highly of Coventry City, I think that Leicester's going to win the league. Second, I think Leeds is pretty strong too. I wouldn't be stunned if Leeds comes straight back up. I like what Michael Carrick is doing at Middlesbrough. I think they have a chance to be good. Playoff teams, if you're looking for. Sunderland is very different this year. I don't think they're going to be able to get back into the playoffs. I like Millwall. I like Coventry. I love the brand of football that Ipswich plays. Southampton probably going to be a team that is in the playoffs as well. But I will go with Leicester, Middlesbrough, and the Fighting Ed Sheerans to be the three teams that come up.
We're Premier League football at Portman Road next year. Like that.
Leicester, Norwich, Watford for me.
I just love seeing the fact that non-parachute teams are getting into the Premier League.
Yeah?
It's great.
Well, West Brom, actually, interesting, is out of their parachute money. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fare this year because they haven't done any business. That might be a team that has a high reputation that may finish lower in the table than I think a lot of people are expecting down in the championship. I think they could be in a little bit of trouble. But quickly, JJ, I know you like the EFL as well. Give me your three coming up.
Yeah, so I had Leicester as well. I think it's just going to be comfortable for them as I closed out the app and now I have to reopen it, so I apologize for that. I am also in the side that Ipswich are going to get through the playoffs because I spoke on a different chain with you that I'm really fascinated to see what they in Plymouth do this year because Plymouth play a pretty interesting brand of football, but Kieran McKenna is an outstanding coach turned manager. He's going to do wonders over there. And Borough. Yeah, Borough would be my second team. So it'd be wow, I'm just absolutely blank there for a second. Sorry about that. Leicester, Middlesbrough, and then Ipswich. So yeah, pretty much the same thing that you had. It's late at night, guys. It's almost 9:00. Oh, and by the way, the Women's World Cup is kicking off in like 13 minutes.
It's late. It's almost 9:00 is the single oldest thing ever been uttered on 150 plus episodes of this podcast.
Sorry.
I think we gotta end it on that right there. Listen, if you're still here, thank you for listening. Box to Box Football. We went through all 20 teams that are going to contest the Premier League this year. Make sure you subscribe on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us reviews, a 5-star review. Tell us if we went too long, if you want more, maybe you want 3 hours of content. Obviously,
no one wants more.
No one wants more. Follow us on X or Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. And, we will be here again next week, and we'll have some actual games to talk about. So the whole first round of matches. So that should be interesting. We'll see if there's any surprises. So for everybody, thanks for listening and watching, and we will see you next week.